Good morning. It is the 2nd of May 2022. Congratulations, you've made it this far into 2022. So you're a winner so far. This is the SitRep for today. So for those who haven't been on a SitRep before, either on the Instagrams or the YouTubes, this is basically where I go through some of the interesting news stories that I've found in the past 24 or this time, I think maybe 72 hours since I last did one, and have a chat about those and the consequences that might come out of some of these news stories in the perspective of preparation. So, how we can best prepare ourselves for what's coming in the future. So, I will crack on with this. There's a number of news stories today. It's going to be quite quick because I'm kind of squeezing this in between a couple other things today. So, going to be working, basically sitting here talking at that screen all day. So I thought I might just get a warm up into it and do a sit rep this morning. So let's roll the sleeves up and get into it. First story, first cab off the rank is the bloodbath that happened on Wall Street just before Wall Street closed on Friday US time. It took a beating. $13 billion got taken out of the pocket of Jeff Bezos alone in just a number of hours. The worst losses in 14 years. And I think this actually, it rounded out April and it made April one of the worst months on record. Certainly one of them, I don't have the stats here, but certainly one of the worst months on the stock market for a very long time. So that was quite interesting. The Australian stock market actually finished up on the week and on the month, I think. But it's going to be interesting when the Australian stock market opens, I think, today, looking at what happened here. Is this the worst of it? We don't know. There was certainly a pretty tech-heavy fall that happened. There was a number of things that sort of influenced that. Gold actually still finished under 1,900 US dollars an ounce, so it's just a touch under. Unfortunately for us Aussies, the Aussie dollar also took a tumble against the US dollar, which means that gold in real terms for us is more expensive right now. Silver's still looking pretty cheap though, so if you feel like buying some silver, now might be an okay time to do it. But that's up to you. So keeping your eye on the stock market, again, the stock market's going up and down all over the shop at the moment. I think it's not a great thing to, if you don't know what you're doing, not a great thing to be jumping into right now. Maybe start to look at commodities and invest in commodities, or invest in food, invest in yourself. And certainly I might even have the story. I think I do have the story a bit further down. Let me see if I can find it. Here we are. Good old Jim Rickards. So if you have a look at any of the pundits or the authors or people who like to talk about commodities especially, but about the stock market, talk about stock market, then you should be familiar with Jim Rickards because he's put a number of books out, and he's constantly talking about that big gold and silver fanboy, and as such, I like him. So he's come out and he said the world is turning to gold. US has basically destroyed trust in the dollar and in the fiat money system as a whole, or they've eroded it significantly. And he's starting to throw numbers out. You always get these numbers thrown out. He's saying that in the not too distant future, gold will have a minimum of 15,000 an ounce. So that's like almost 10 times, or thereabouts, what it's been recently. So yeah, that's what he's saying. Whether you want to listen to that or not is up to you. But that's just the stuff that's bouncing out there, and I just want to relay that to you. Because I know a number of you don't like to watch the news. I get comments from people saying, "Hey, this is cool. I like what you're doing. I don't like watching mainstream media. I don't blame you. Neither do I. In fact, some of the stuff I get is from mainstream media, and I'm sort of looking at those things. But a lot of it, I'm trying to get from those other extreme sources. So I always say this: I'm trying to look at as far around the spectrum as I can when I'm pulling these news stories in. Hopefully, if I can get that wide span of information or angles on this information, I can find something in the middle that's relatively truthful. World's biggest shipping hubs. I thought this was interesting. So, a comparison between the shipping hubs, the biggest shipping hubs in the world from 2005 to 2021, so last year, showed that number of them were in Asia, unsurprisingly, in 2005. We had two that were in Europe, being Rotterdam and Hamburg, and Los Angeles was rounding out the top 10. Now, in 2021, we have 9 out of 10 Asian ports. One is in Europe, that's Rotterdam, and that's it. That rounds out your top 10. So let me count this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them are Chinese. The ones that aren't Chinese are Hong Kong, which kind of Chinese. We've got Busan in South Korea and Singapore. So as we can see, they're very, very China heavy now. The shipping industry is very China centric, very Asia centric, kind of harkening back to ye olde days, where places like Singapore were a main hub through this area, and Hong Kong. So what does this tell us? We've already seen, so Shanghai is number 1 last year, and obviously Shanghai is having a huge lockdown at the moment, and it is affecting their ability to actually operate their ports. So these shipping hubs are under pressure. So the number 1 being Shanghai, all but shut down from all reports. They can't get enough people in because of the COVID lockdowns that they're doing. They can't actually get enough workers in there to get the boats in. If you look at the maps at the moment, there's some really cool maps out there you can see where all the ships are. And there's just this huge swarm of ships just sitting off the coast there waiting to get in. And, once ships get in, they also need to go out. So it's not just ships getting in, it's also clearing stuff out of that country. But that supply chain coming out of there, Singapore especially, but we've got a number of these other ports that are at risk if COVID spreads throughout China, and it already is, and they're already threatening other lockdowns. Then we see two or three of these locked down as well. That's kind of like the world's ability to ship stopped right there. I mean, in the medium term, we can probably pick up the slack with other ports, but even like Los Angeles dropped out of the top 10 now. But if Los Angeles was try and pick it up right now, they can't. They are backlogged as well. Many ports around the world are backlogged, and so this is actually a huge problem for our supply chain across the world, because the way we do things and have been doing them for the past 15, 20 years has been increasingly globalistic, has been increasingly using these shipping lanes, using these supply lines that are now totally bogged up. So this is a real issue. All right, jumping into a real interesting story that I thought popped up about coal. Everyone's talking about we're all going to be driving Teslas soon. We're all going to be on solar power. Coal's history. And people getting all the Greens getting angry at Australians because the bloody Liberals, they still want to do coal because they want to make money, and that's what they do. But also, there just doesn't seem to be a way we can get out of coal. Not easily. Not that's what this story is basically saying. It's saying if we want to get away from coal, maybe nuclear, but there's no easy way for us to get out of coal right now. If we want to maintain the amount of electricity or the lifestyle that we're leading at the moment. So without severely affecting people's lives around the world, we're just not going to be able to get away with it. China has the highest coal consumption, making up 54% of the world's coal electricity generation. And a huge amount of that is from their industry. So without coal, they're not going to have that industry. Without the industry, China is still the world's factory. So we're not going to have stuff and things. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, this is something we really need to think about. Coupled with this, another interesting story. Let me just find it. That's not it. So many stories that have happened. Coupled with this, there's two stories I want to talk about. I'm not sure how to pronounce this name, Verberg or Tverberg. Basically, he's come out and said the world has a major crude oil problem, that there's going to be crude oil shortages. So this is another energy sector thing. These shortfalls are going to become more likely in the years ahead, and this is going to push more countries into conflict. So what we're going to see is increased conflict over resources, and this particular one being oil, but you can also add water. You can also add food to that list. You might be able to add many other things to that list as well, and other factors that we know increase conflicts around the world are food shortages, which are coming or are here for some people in the world, and weather effects. So we're seeing increased weather effects. So I think what we're basically seeing, the picture that I'm seeing when I take a step back is like we're coming into a period of increased conflict. That's, things aren't going to get better; they're going to get worse. Here it is. France shuts down 50% of nuclear reactors amid an energy crunch. So Europe is obviously feeling a pretty harsh energy crunch right now because they're trying to de-link from Russian natural gas and Russia oil, and they've got a massive shortfall. France is one of the countries that's feeling the pinch, and so now they've just decided they've taken 28 of 56 atomic reactors offline due to defects or maintenance. If you haven't read, I'm reading the book Atlas Shrugged at the moment, and it is exactly what is happening in the world right now. It just spells it out. It's a very long read, and it's written in the 50s. So if you're not into that kind of literature, then it might be a bit harsh for you. But I really highly recommend people go read Atlas Shrugged, because you'll understand what's going on here. You'll be like, wait, why are there defects and why do they need maintenance on all these nuclear reactors right now? Well, this is what we're feeling right now is the effects of policy for the last 5, 10, 20 years. This is flow on of politics and social movements that have been eroding some of the things that we were going to need right now, and now we don't have, and now we're not going to have, and we're probably going to hit a point where it's going to get critical, where we could even hit a point where it's going to be we have such a shortfall that we can't actually create the things that we had anymore. And that is kind of what happens in a civilization collapse. World on the brink of commodities shock, a study says. Global energy prices are projected to rise dramatically, culminating in the biggest price jump in commodities in nearly half a century, the World Bank has warned. According to the bank's April Commodity Markets Outlook report, global energy prices, which have already seen a dramatic surge due to ongoing COVID-19 lockdowns in China and Russia and the Ukraine conflict, are expected to surge by 50.5% in 2022. So imagine now, whatever you pay for electricity, if you're an Aussie like me, then it's probably an exorbitant amount among many other things that we already pay way too much for. Well, prepare for that to go up by 50%. Prepare for that to go up by 50%. So a lot of Aussies, I don't know, let's say you pay $300 per quarter for your electricity bill, add another $150 on top of that, and then see how you're going. On top of that, expect food prices to go up as well. This is another cheerful subject. Climate change may cause future pandemics. I mean, this is something that comes up all the time. And this is a story that's actually been out in the news for, I remember reading this probably 10, 15 years ago, when people were, we need to be worried about climate change like right now. And people were like, why? Sea levels go up, whatever, who cares? And it's like, no, there's all these other things that come from it when the climate starts to change. There's a whole heap of unintended effects or unknown effects that are going to happen. And one of them is an increase in pandemics. So we're probably going to see more pandemics. Researchers warned, this is just a cutout of it. Researchers warned that they're talking about these animals could spread diseases like SARS, Ebola, and Zika to humans, with Africa and Asia most at risk. Asia being home to the majority of human beings on the face of the earth. So not a great picture that we're looking at, really. When we start to put all these things together. Yeah, I'll skip over that this morning. I don't really want to talk about it. Japanese encephalitis detected in 30 New South Wales piggeries. Pork supply pork supply set to plunge. So this is from a week and a bit ago. So I'm not sure what the fallout now is from this story, but expect this to happen. What happened with these all the poultry within the US, how we had this avian bird flu. Now we're seeing Japanese encephalitis detected in pigs. By all reports, and I haven't seen anything to the contrary yet, a pig with Japanese encephalitis that is consumed by a human does not pass on Japanese encephalitis to the human. But do not quote me on that, and don't go out there eating Japanese encephalitis infected pigs just because I said that. But what it will do is destroy that sector of the food supply chain within Australia, and yet another thing that's attacking our food supply chain. What's happening over in Europe right now? 8,000 UK troops sent to massive Eastern Europe joint exercises. There is a number of joint exercises or internal country exercises that are going on at the moment in Europe that I've kind of loosely been tracking. There's probably about 3 or 4 off the top of my head that are larger ones that a lot of countries are throwing a lot of troops into. This is the same sort of thing that we're seeing, I believe, with Russia going, oh no, we're just doing exercise with Belarus. Nothing to see here. But it's a buildup of forces. That's what it is, under the guise of, it's just an exercise. We're not doing anything. China suspends North Korea cross-border freight trains due to COVID. So North Korea is kind of buoyed up a lot by China and their interactions and their trade with China. But they've had to cut it off. China's actually cut it. China's very, very afraid about COVID, and there's been some talk about COVID in North Korea. So they've just said, we're just going to cut this off for now. What effect that will have on North Korea is yet to be seen. In fact, we'll probably never see it because they don't release that sort of information. Russian cyber attacks. I love a good cyber attack. And you might recall that I was talking about these cyber attacks that were coming, that we were getting blasted with this in the media 2 weeks ago. And I even went as far as saying, like, it is interesting to me that they are saying this. Why wouldn't they just actually go and do something about the cyber attacks? Why were they plastering it throughout the media? Why were they doing, like, the official government, like the CIA, the FBI, and the NSA were doing media releases saying, hey, cyber attacks, the Russians are about to cyber attack? I thought it was odd. And like most things, I usually like to see what people do, not what they say, or at least analyze why they're saying it. So what are we seeing now? Russian cyber attacks fail to materialize after Biden warned it's coming. So maybe that was their plan all along. They'll say, hey, we'll put this out into the media space. We'll say cyber attacks are coming. That will spook Russia into going, oh, maybe we shouldn't cyber attack because they know it's us now. So maybe they're playing 3D chess. Maybe they're not. But I think we're seeing a lot of crap come out of the US and their government. And I think people should be starting to realize this after almost 2 years of constant shit that's been poured out on us from our governments. Not everything you say is true. In fact, very, very little of what you say is true. Sweden failed to integrate immigrants, says their prime minister. I just chucked this one up, and I'm just going to talk on it quickly. Sweden has had a number of issues in the past with their immigration policy and the problem with immigrants within their country, which then causes a reaction where they've had some far-right organizations, build up around this topic. Now, this is actually a really interesting statistic, and people don't often like to hear things like this, but countries with higher immigration have higher problems with that immigration. And I'm definitely not anti-immigration at all. I just think it needs to be done with more poise or more forethought or thinking about how these people are integrated into the society. Because if you just look at it from the statistics, countries with higher immigration have high crime rates, have high terrorism rates, have high whatever it is, problems that are going on there. Rates might be the counter to that. People getting angry about immigrants being in there. It might be the immigrants themselves. It might be a mix of the two. I don't know what the causation is there, but there is definitely correlation in there. And it's something we need to look at and something we need to think about whenever people are going like, yes, open our borders and just let every Ukrainian in that needs help. Well, there are consequences to those sorts of decisions. And as I said, I'm not saying don't do it. And I'm certainly open to the idea of immigration. I think it's a relatively good thing. I think it just needs to be done tactfully and with forethought. Anyway, I'm going to drop that part there and continue on. Israel puts on notice Iran may attack directly. So I keep throwing up this news stuff about this Middle East area because I think it's just a blind spot in a lot of the mainstream media at the moment. Nobody's really reporting on it, but there is conflict going on in the Middle East and it is increasing in intensity. And Israel's just come out and say, hey, we think Iran could actually directly attack us. There's been this build up, this tit for tat between, Israel's historically been, the punching bag of the Middle East, if you will, since their formation, where they've been attacked from a lot of different sides and a lot of different angles. But it appears to be increasing and is getting quite hot in that area of the world right now. So this is, again, something for us to keep our eye on, take that step back, look at what's happening in the world as a whole, and not just get focused in on one or two issues that are going on. EU prepares Russian oil embargo that's set to come in soon, Friday or this Wednesday. I think they were voting on it. Yep, good luck with that. If you've heard me talk about these before, I think the embargoes, the sanctions, their intention is not working. Who they're actually hurting is the people that are actually putting the sanctions on. And they really need to rethink how they're doing these things because at the end of the day, who pays for this stuff? Who cops the fine? Who goes without fuel? Us. Who has to pay more for fuel? Us. Who goes without food and has to pay more for food? Us. Who's the one they're saying, hey, take cold showers, take shorter showers, drive less, don't drive on Sundays, all this sort of stuff. It comes down to the average Joe. So people are making these decisions and saying, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. The average Joe is the one who gets hurt from it. And I don't know, like, do most people support that sort of stuff? I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't be happy with it. All right, quickly, I'll just wrap up with a few other things. God, there's a lot of stories in here. All right, now I'll just wrap up with this because I think it's a good one. It's in kind of in our neck of the woods here, down in Australia, because we're talking about China. High-ranking US and UK officials held secret talks in early March to discuss Greater Britain involvement on the issue of Taiwan. So, yesterday, I was talking about UK foreign minister coming, or it was yesterday, not yesterday, maybe the day before. The UK foreign minister coming out and all of a sudden going, hey, we need to get more involved in this Taiwan thing. We need to do this. NATO actually should be getting involved in Taiwan. We need NATO to go down there and secure Taiwan, essentially. And I was like, that's interesting. UK's in here. Now we're seeing this sort of story where the UK and the US have been having meetings and they've been obviously going behind the scenes. I mean, it's been pretty obvious if you've seen what UK's been talking about, their rhetoric and stuff like this heading towards Taiwan. And we see on the other side, things like China and Russia teaming up, China and Iran teaming up. So we're seeing closer ties with China in a military sense with other people that have been ousted by US, UK, these other sorts of countries, the West. But again, this is just another sort of thing that we're seeing where the lines are being drawn out now. The dodgeball teams are getting picked. We're going, you're on my team, you're on my team. And those who are left out are kind of banding together and going, okay, we'll form our own little team. But another portender or harbinger of issues that are yet to come. And I think this Taiwan one is going to be a big one when it kicks off. And it's going to affect us here in Australia as well. So that's why I like to focus on it, because I like to be a bit more Australia focused if I can be. So I mean, there's a whole heap of other ties in here, the Solomon stuff and what's been going on there and who's been interacting with that. And, you know, this whole situation is just it's sitting on the back burner at the moment, and it's boiling. It's getting hotter and hotter. So this is something we need to look at, something we need to think about here in Australia, something we might need to start preparing for. I mean, you should be preparing anyway. It certainly doesn't seem like the world is getting into a safer, more stable situation at the moment. We are trending in probably the wrong direction, but we're trending in the direction. It's just what's happening at the moment. We're trending in towards, I think, what will be harder times for us to come as individuals, as communities, as nations. It's going to be harder times to come. And the more and more that I look at what our governments are doing, I have less and less. I mean, I never really had a lot of faith in what they were doing, but I've certainly got, I don't know if I can go into the minuses, but it's getting to that point where I don't think we can rely on the decisions of our leaders, quote unquote leaders, anymore, that we need to start taking things into our own hands. We need to start thinking about our own situation, our own survival situation. One of the favorite things that I like to say to people when I'm teaching survival courses is always retain agency over your own survival situation, or always retain agency over your own life for as long as that you can. And that's all I encourage people to do. Become more self-reliant, retain that agency. We need to start thinking about this. We can't expect the government to keep handing out money, or at least we can't expect them to keep doing it and it have no consequence, because we're starting to see the consequence of what happens when we shell out money to entire population. We can't keep expecting them to look after us. We can't keep expecting them to secure us. We can't even expect them to feed us in the future. So we need to be more responsible as individuals, as human beings, look after ourselves, look after our own families, look after our communities, and horribly worse in the future. And if things don't get worse in the future and everything turns out to be great, we'll still be in a great position. So that's it for today. I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for jumping on. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all the comments that come through when people throw comments, the likes, stuff like that. I appreciate people just watching it, especially on the YouTubes as well. I'm starting to get some nice comments on YouTube, and it's a bit different. I mean, YouTube can be up and down with its comments, but I really appreciate every single person who's listening to this. I really appreciate the fact that if you're listening to this, then you're probably in some way more prepared than the average person. And that is what fills my heart with joy. That's all I want in the world, is that people be more prepared for a disaster or for emergency. So that's it for today, guys. Loving the work, loving what you're doing. If you've got any questions, shoot them through to me. Very, very happy to chat and talk about stuff. But until next time, keep prepping. Thanks, Cat Riggs. Really appreciate you. Keep prepping, and Semper Paratus.